Well, I mean, I have used Upwork and several other like Freelancer and all that kind of stuff. Those sites.
If you
for
ever
a long time.
mention the U word again,
I was
sir.
just gonna say though, that's because I didn't know that Commerce Hero existed. Welcome to the Up and Away podcast, sponsored by Commerce Hero.
Commerce Hero Daily number 34. What's up, Steve?
What's up, Dan?
It's so sad that you can't see what I'm doing on the camera as we're talking. I do so many
sad,
fun,
but
interactive things.
It's sad, but it's actually just weird that I try to pretend like I know what you're doing.
Yeah,
like I can
it is.
see you through the camera. I was watching one of our other episodes, and it was weird because I was looking straight at you, or at least that's what it would appear to the viewer, and
Right.
you were just looking off in La La Land.
I was totally thinking about that because
Yeah,
I think if it's just me by myself, it's not as weird if I'm looking in La La Land. But when you're looking at me and I'm looking in La La Land, that's super weird.
Exactly. In fact, it's actually pretty rude.
I apologize.
Yeah. I make sure I have eye contact with you.
Okay, I'm gonna work harder on that. Steve Nam, the podcast man. We are talking today about. So I had this random idea yesterday around agencies having a role in house for like an e-commerce. Administrative type role, e-commerce manager-ish type of a role. And the idea is, part of what agencies do, they deliver a site for a client, and part of what they do is QA and testing. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about as I'm doing my own testing and kind of dog fooding of my own app is like, I feel like you test so much better when you're actually using or quote dog fooding your own app. And so I was thinking, like, what if agencies, instead of just doing QA, what if they actually had a store admin that was doing actual work on the site on behalf of the merchant? So like shipping orders and fulfilling orders and doing, I don't know, customer support, whatever, like, but actually using it. And so that's the idea, that's the topic of the day.
Got it.
It sounds like you have some,
It sounds like I have some what?
It sounds like you have some background with, not necessarily e-commerce agency stuff, but with working with developers on building something, and you like as the client and that testing and things like that, so you can come at it from that perspective a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have used Upwork and several other like Freelancer and all that kind of stuff. Those sites.
If you
for a
ever
long time.
mention the U word again,
I was
sir.
just gonna say though, that's because I didn't know that Commerce Hero existed. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. But yes, I have worked with a lot of different developers, and you give them like all these specs, and then I think we've talked about this before, but they understand it in theory, and they code up for making sure that it would work. But to them, it's just theory, and then you actually use like, let's say it's a WordPress plugin. I don't know if that's a bad word with you, but WordPress Magento. But
don't you ever use the W word again.
You plug it into your site, and you activate it, and boom, it's totally broken, or it looks weird, or whatever, because they don't understand how it's actually supposed to be used.
Right.
Even though you've explained it to them, they understand it in theory, but they've never actually tested it out for a real use case on your site.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason why I can be so harsh on the developer in this case is because I am the developer. And like, I'll do it myself where I build some kind of a feature, and it's really doing stuff on mobile has really helped to flip the switch and put me in a complete user mode where I'm completely at the mercy of the app. I can't take any shortcuts. And I'll be like, why did I do it that way? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And so it's just something like you're in a different mode when you're building something versus when you're trying to use it. So,
right. So as far as the agency, though, you had a suggestion for what would you call this role again?
I don't know if it's an e-commerce admin, maybe like a store admin type of a role. So they're administrating the site. They're using the site, the back end, to actually do the business of what the merchant does, fulfilling orders.
And so you're saying currently currently agencies don't even do that type of testing?
They do test. They do testing. They do test those things. They don't actually use those. They don't actually use. And I had somebody. So I put out a tweet yesterday. Got some interesting feedback from people on it. One person asked, "What's the difference between using and testing?" And I thought that was a great question. And I think that it's just, when you're testing something, it's more, like we said, theoretical. When you're using it, it's the whole dog fooding. You're actually using it. So you're in a different state of mind. You're trying to get work done. Like, I don't know a good way to explain it. Or I think if you've done it, you just get it. If you've been on the client side, or you know what I mean, like you just sort of get it intuitively. I don't know a good way to explain it, but
well, to put up another question, what would be the difference then between someone testing it, like processing orders, processing fulfillment or whatever, and then actually a real customer coming in and using the site? Because you really can't use it until you have a real user or customer come to the site and purchase something, right?
Right. I mean, so there's different types of users that interact with the site. There's the actual end customer that's obviously using the front end and those types of things. And probably the most realistic way to get that type of testing is to there's services that you can use where you can hire somebody to use your site as like an end customer. So you could do that. That's a little bit different. The reason I like...
What exactly would this e-commerce store admin do?
Yeah, so this store admin is doing stuff on the back end and managing the site and stuff. And the reason why I like that idea is because, if you're an agency, you have a client, that's something they have to do. Like, that's a role they have in-house that they have to do. They have to have somebody that does that. So if you could do it for them, and then also you could help with training. So if you had that role in-house, you're doing some of the administrative work for them. So not now, instead of just like the client, like, hey, I'm going to pay you to test my site more. Like, that's not fun. It's like, hey, I'm going to pay you for 20 hours of actual site administration and customer service. Yeah. I feel like there'd be more value there for the client. And so, yeah, I think it might just be neat to see if, that type of a role could work.
Are you suggesting that this person be on the agency side, or like managed by the agency, or in-house managed by you as a client?
Yeah, I think in-house with the agency. And like, let's say you're an agency and you've got, 10 or 20 clients at any given time, or 5 to 10 new website builds at any time. Like, you could spread that person among multiple different clients, right? Because you're not going to have a full-time job worth of work for them for every single client, but you could spread them out among all your different clients. And then they could help, the clients do some actual store administration. Also could help with training. Because agencies do that as well. They train their clients on things. That's all great. But I think if you were the person actually doing the work, again, I think you'd be even a little bit better able to train people merchant side if you were doing the work yourself.
Yeah. So I mean, from the agencies I've worked with, it is a lot of, okay, we're done with this part of the site. Here's a few different versions of it. Pick the one that you think is great, and they'll come to us with that. Or they'll say, hey, we just got done with this. Go ahead and test it out. Let us know if you see anything wrong. Let us know if there's anything we need to improve. Is that generally, when you work with Magento agencies, that's their process? They have the client test everything out and just let them know what else they need to do?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, so in that case, though, then you would have to have an e-commerce store manager on the agency side who communicates with the client to make sure that all their goals, so that they understand what the client's wanting. Essentially, it's like their representative who does all the stuff for them versus them having to do all the testing themselves.
Exactly. And I mean, maybe the client wants you to continue doing that for an ongoing basis. Like, maybe they want you to just administrate certain aspects of their site for them for a year, in which case, like, hey, there's an additional revenue stream for you. Or maybe
Right.
more likely they want you to do some of the initial handoff period and then they want you to hand it off to them. In that case, it's not a huge moneymaker for you, but I think it could be a neat, it just seems like it could be a neat way to have more empathy for the client's perspective and to get a little deeper in there with actually testing things. I mean, like you're saying, the front end of the site is probably the more important testing that happens. Like, hey, does all the front end stuff work? And I'm not sure how you'd approach that necessarily. But to the extent that you could cover certain areas of the site through back-end administration, I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Now, if you are a client and you have somebody in-house who might take care of that kind of stuff, maybe it's your sales manager, marketing manager. I don't know, like who would normally get that in one of your clients' companies. Who would be in charge of communicating with the agency to make sure that the store is running the way it's supposed to?
It could vary. I mean, for smaller merchants, maybe you're dealing directly with the director of marketing. Maybe you're dealing with, a whole suite of people, e-commerce manager on the client side, e-commerce director on the client side. Maybe they have a project manager client side. So there's lots of different, scenarios.
In that case, though, would it not make sense for the marketing manager or sales manager or somebody who's actually going to be in charge of making sure that the site is running optimally or ideally to be handling that side of thing, or to be handling the communication between the agency and you guys? Or are you saying that it would be even better to have another layer of like a e-commerce store, admin who is kind of representing the finished work of the agency, and then communicating between the sales manager and marketing manager? Is that kind of what you're saying? Just like that extra layer to kind of make the process of usability
I don't even
complete?
know I don't know if it'd have to be a separate layer, like the client only talks to this person and then this person relays that information. It's more of like a project management type or account management function. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be a separate layer. It's just maybe a different person that's in the mix. Maybe that person is sitting in on meetings and things like that. And then as the project gets closer to handoff, they get a little bit more involved. So yeah, I don't think it'd have to be a separate layer necessarily.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, whatever it is, however you assign roles, at the end of the day, it's about getting better, not just testing, but theoretical testing, but actual usability testing. Is that kind of the goal here that we're talking about?
Yeah, like I just think
there's like something that can just be improved just to take it a little bit further towards the finish line before handing it off to the client.
Yeah, like I think anytime you can actually use the thing that you're building, not just test it in a theoretical sense, but actually using it, I think that changes the quality of testing that you're doing. I think it just fundamentally improves the quality of the product.